And we talk about ethics and boundaries and all that kind of stuff, cultural competencies. A lot of this is about soft skills. And soft skills are essentially people skills, the ability to read emotions on other people, the ability to know your own emotions, the ability to know when you are projecting your emotions onto somebody else and it's not really them, it's you. And as one really interesting educator once told me, they said that they thought soft skills should be called hard skills because they're hard to teach and they're hard to learn. It's really actually very easy to learn 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 always equals 2. It's very, very hard to know when you should ask somebody for more information or back off and give them space. It's very hard to know those type of things in life. So let's let me share my little slide presentation. Again, I really invite you to speak up if anything looks interesting to you. Boom. Cool. Okay. Can we all see therapeutic relationships and all that good stuff? Good. Thank you. All right. So, let's skip on that. So, the whole idea of all this, really this entire chapter, is what serves the client best. Right? We're trying to build effective relationships with our clients, so what serves them best. By the way, I would add a little thing that your book doesn't add. And the thing I would add is it should serve you best too. The therapeutic relationship should actually be one that's good for the client and the therapist. Essentially, the client should get the benefits from the massage without negatives, and you should get remuneration, money from the massage without negatives. Really should. This is all about what serves the client best. And it's about general professionalism, which is adhering to a set of values. Professionalism is a really wavy concept because it's a matter of opinion, some of it. But I will tell you, in legal cases and things like that, it comes down to reasonable expectations. Did you behave in a reasonable manner? Courts really look at this, by the way, when they're looking at gray area stuff. Did you behave in a manner that most reasonable people would? That's actually how they determine professionalism. They say, would most massage therapists jump, off a high chair and drive their elbow into their client's back? No? Well, that's unreasonable behavior. It really is about, would you behave in a manner that seems kind of the norm for most people? And that's what we're looking at. We will be talking about ethics here, which is just kind of moral behavior. So there are principles of ethics. There are principles of ethics, and we will be going over each of these, but I want to give you short definitions of them, because let's be honest, you're not going to remember 14 pages on autonomy. So one of the principles of ethics is autonomy. This is a principle to social work too. This is a principle to a lot of things. This is a principle to good parenting within reason. It is the client's right to decide. We try to do some good parenting too. We try to let our children decide what's best for them when we can. If they decide to run out in the street or not wear clothes or something like that, we have to stop that. But we try to give them their own choice when we can. The same thing is true with clients. Autonomy is the client's right to decide what they want. And this might sound like kind of an obvious thing, like of course they get to decide, but I've even caught myself kind of telling a client, no, this is what's best for you, let's go do this. And being kind of frustrated when they didn't agree with me and didn't want to do that. For example, somebody whose low back hurts them, but they don't want me to touch their low back. Or they don't want me to work their glutes, which tie into their low back, and I know that's part of the problem. But that's their choice to make, even though I might know or believe I know that they're going to get more relief from that. It's very easy to get kind of stuck in my own head if I know better. But the fact is the client has autonomy, which is the right to decide for themselves. And you want them to, because if there's problems later, let's say they ask you to go really deep, you want that to be their decision to some extent, because Otherwise, they're going to be very mad at you when they're sore the next day, right? And you want them to have some autonomy and some say in the relationship. It's good for you, too. You don't want to take full control of every decision made. So that's autonomy. Veracity is telling the truth. You'll often hear people talk about the veracity of somebody's statement. It means the truthfulness of the statement. Tell your clients the truth. There are some exceptions to that. There are some exceptions to veracity, telling your client the truth. I think it is perfectly permissible to lie when it makes everything easier and doesn't hurt anybody. So, for example, I know therapists that say they're married because it just makes it easier if for clients to not think about having a relationship with them, right? And they're lying, they're not married. But that is a situation where they have not hurt somebody. There's no veracity in their statement. It's a lie. But it's a way of kind of protecting everybody's feelings. So it's not always wrong to bend the truth. But you're not supposed to bend it when it comes to how much they're paying, why you're doing what you're doing, that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Beneficence is that the client should benefit from what you're doing. Now that might sound like duh, but that means you shouldn't be doing treatments that you don't think really do anything. And people do, right? They sell stuff that they know doesn't really work. They do things that they know really don't help. And you should not be doing that. You should believe that what you're doing has a chance of working. Like, you should have good belief in what you're doing. We should be doing this because we believe the massage is going to benefit the person, or we should not be massaging them. By the way, it could benefit them emotionally, physically, all sorts of different ways, but we should believe there's benefit. This one's super, super big. Non-malfeasance. Non-malfeasance means do no harm. So, remember when I talked about testing in the corner of the carpet when you have a cleaning product? That goes along with non-malfeasance. So, yes, I want to make you better, but what I definitely don't want to do is make you worse. I'd rather you leave not better or worse than leaving worse. So, if you come to me and I think I need to go really deep on some area to kind of loosen it up, but I've never worked on you before, I need to not go deep the first time because I don't want to do something that could actually make you worse. I would much rather people say, oh, that Tapscott, he's useless, than, oh, that Tapscott, he hurt me, he caused damage, right? So when in doubt, back off. When in doubt, be careful, because the thing that would bother you the most is actually doing harm. And the thing that I like the most about massage is, in general, if it's practiced properly, you will never do harm. You will never do more harm than a bruise. And that's a good profession to be in, because a lot of healing professions, you can kill somebody, and not in massage, as long as you're kind of behaving in a normal manner. But that's non-malfeasance. It is the idea of do no harm. It's the physician's oath. Do no harm. Fidelity kind of means faithful, by the way. But it means do what you say you'll do. And I recommend you guys do this with even small things, because people tend to judge your character based not on the big things you promise to do, but the small things you promise to do. If you say the massage starts at 8 a.m., make sure you're there in time for it to start at 8 a.m. People tend to trust you based on your small gestures. And so do what you say you're going to do. Follow through with it, which means also be very careful not to overpromise. Justice. Justice is usually people equate with equality, but I would like to point out to you that fair does not equal equal. I actually don't treat each of you equally. I try to treat each of you fairly and equitably. The reason I don't treat each of you equally is because you're not equal. I don't mean that one of you is better than the other. That's not true at all. but you're different from one another. You have different needs. And justice really means that we try to be fair in how we meet those needs, but we consider those needs still. Right? So just be careful. Justice isn't actually about treating everybody exactly the same. It's about treating everybody with the same value. And that's a little bit different, right? So you have the same value as all your other classmates, but you might have different needs. You might need tutoring and somebody else doesn't. Well, is it fair that I only give tutoring to you? Yes, it is. If you're the one who needs it, absolutely. And confidentiality is the last one. Don't share information without permission. Now, your book's going to go into a big, long thing that you can thank me now for. We're not going to go into because it's not very appropriate, actually, for your profession. But they're going to go into talking about how you have to lock up records and how you have to do all sorts of stuff. You're not a doctor, and the records you're going to have on clients aren't that revealing. And you shouldn't share them with other people without written consent. I agree with that, but you're not going to have access to these amazing records on your clients to begin with. I think you should think about confidentiality more with what people share with you in the massage room. Be very careful when you share what a client's shared with you, if it could be identified in any way whatsoever. So that means I can talk to you guys about past clients I've had, but I should do it in a way that you can't possibly tell who I'm talking about. Right? So, because that's confidentiality. So what people share with you in the massage room, in general, is 100% their business, and it stays in the massage room. In general, unless we'll go into more detail, unless somebody's in danger, things like that. But in general, be very careful. And that's the place where massage therapists get messed up. It's not with patient records. They get in trouble with sharing stuff that somebody shared with them in the massage room. And sometimes it's innocent stuff. So, sometimes somebody shares with you like, oh, it's my wife's birthday. And then you see them later and say, oh, it's your birthday. Well, maybe she didn't want to celebrate her birthday. And it seems like what you're doing is completely acceptable. But that was shared with you in the massage room. It kind of needs to stay there. So really simple little things can actually turn into big things when you share stuff inside the massage room. Questions? Thoughts? Anything? Exciting, huh? Riveting. All right. We already talked about autonomy. I just gave you an overview of all this stuff, so now we'll go over it kind of quickly. But the thing about autonomy, why you're giving somebody else the choice to make their own decision, is it's a sign of respect that they know what's best for them. Like, it's kind of arrogant for us to think that we know better about what a client needs than they do. They've been in that body for 20 to 80 years. They probably have a much better idea of what they need than we do. And so autonomy is really about respect. Even when people have problems, you want to help them, but you don't want to tell them what to do. You have to have enough respect for them that they know what to do. And what's nice when you treat people that way is you're not pitying them. You're saying, I believe that you are intelligent enough and strong enough to figure this out. I'm here to support your decisions. That's a very different approach. And that's why we do autonomy. When it comes to veracity, this truth-telling, what's really important is that you're telling a client the risks and benefits from the treatment, and you're being truthful about that. And let me give you an example where this comes into play. This is the most common example. I have people all the time or I had people when I was doing massage regularly all the time, say stuff like, hey, could you go deeper in that area? And it might be something I'm going really deep on. And I don't mind going deeper, but when I would turn to them and say, hey, I don't mind going deeper in this area, but you're probably going to be sore tomorrow, and you might even bruise from this. I mean, we're talking pretty deep at this point. Are you okay with that? Like, I am listing off the risks and benefits. Yes, it might loosen up the area, but you're asking me to do something that I think at this point, just from my experience of working on thousands of people, you're going to be really sore from. And they're like, nope, it's okay, go ahead and do it. Or I've actually had many people say, oh, I didn't want that. No, you're right, don't go more. But I'm letting them choose, use their autonomy based on my veracity, my truth-telling to make that decision. Now, let me add this one little caveat. There are times that they ask me to go even deeper than that where I think they're going to get injured. even if the client, and I say, I think you're going to get injured, even if the client now says, I understand that, I don't care, go ahead and do it, you are obligated not to do it. So yes, they get to make a choice, but they only get to make a choice up to the point where you think it's actually dangerous. At that point, you are responsible to use your own good judgment. And so there are people occasionally who have to be like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't feel like that's a good idea. Maybe next time we'll see how you handle this. But so just because the client said it's okay does not mean it's okay to jump on their back. That's not okay. You still have to behave in a safe manner. But make sure they know the benefits and the risks of what you're doing if you're at that kind of point. That's about as risky as massage gets, by the way. You know, you might be sore and bruised, things like that. So don't overthink it. Benefits of non-malfeasance, we already talked about this. Does it have benefit or could it do harm, right? And that's the big thing. Just always kind of tell yourself, hey, is this going to do any harm? Because if it is, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Let's not worry about that. Keep your promises, of course. Seek not to discriminate. This is the real justice thing, is kind of ask yourself, you know, when you're making decisions with clients, would I do this for another client? And just try to treat people with fairness. Again, I said that's not always equal, because sometimes they have different needs. But, you know, and that's a hard one, by the way, but just something to think about. I won't get into it too much, by the way, because it's a very hard thing to prove whether you're actually being fair to all your clients. We already talked about confidentiality, but you have to safeguard clients' information. Like I said, you really should, by the way, have their intake forms put away someplace safe that other people can't get into them. But this does not come up with that. I've actually never seen a case where that was the issue. The issue is usually what the therapist talked about that the client shared with them. If you do give up any of the client's stuff, you need to have a release form to give up their information. So you need to have something signed that says that you can share their information with their doctor, with their insurance company, whatever. Okay? That's going to be very rare for you guys. Very rare. But there could be a case where they want you to share their information with their lawyer or something like that. You want some type of release form or at least an email coming from them that says, I am okay with this. Something that proves that. Emails are actually, by the way, very good proof. They're time-stamped. And anytime I want something that's going to kind of back up a case, emails really make a big difference. But something before you share their records. There are times when you can be forced to share a client's record. Again, I don't think this is ever going to happen to you. But if your records are subpoenaed, you don't need the client's release for that. That means a court is asking for their records, and you can turn them over. But the bigger limit is if you believe that there is child abuse or elder abuse of your client, you are required to report that. So if you have an elderly client that you think is being abused and abuse can be neglected, by the way, not cared for, and you think it's severe, you're supposed to report that. If you had a child client and you think they're being abused, you're seeing lots of bruises on them and things don't make sense and stuff, you are supposed to report that. You are obligated to report that. Again, this will probably never happen to you because, unfortunately, children that are being abused and elderly people that are being abused, their caregivers don't take them for massage. So you'll probably never run into this because the people that are doing this type of stuff to people aren't caring enough for them to get a massage. It doesn't make sense. But I just want to let you know that is mandatory reporting. If you think that somebody that can't care for themselves fully is being hurt, you should report it. Also, by the way, this will probably never happen too, but if you think somebody's in imminent danger of hurting themselves or another, you should report that too. If I tell you I'm going to kill myself in the massage room, you can report that. that's imminent danger. Or if I tell you I'm going to go home and kill my roommate, that's, that's something you can report to. I don't think this will ever happen to you guys. I hope it'll never happen to you guys, because it just doesn't. But I just want you to be aware. Those are the times that you don't have to keep your mouth shut at all. You can call the police and say, this is what I heard. So that's mandatory reporting, stuff where there's abuse involved. So let's talk about therapeutic relationships, which is the relationship you have between you and your client in order to perform therapy. But before I go into that, any questions so far? No, it's kind of dry material, I know. Jeez. So, really, relationships are built on respect, right? And respect means, by the way, that you respect another person's beliefs, even if they are not your beliefs. I can think of many examples of this. We all do it for each other in class. It's why this class is so good, right? Like, I'm a vegan, but I don't look down on you for eating meat, and I don't think anybody in class looks down on me for being a vegan. We don't go around, and we can even talk about it and stuff, but we don't look down on it, even though I'm a vegan for very personal reasons, and you might be a meat eater for very personal reasons, right? But you can respect my decisions, and I can respect your decisions. For one thing, I used to be a meat eater. How can I not respect your decisions? Those kind of things, that's respect. We are all different religions, right? But I respect your view of the existence of God or the non-existence of God and the type of God or gods, all that stuff, because I respect that you're an intelligent person and you can come to those conclusions. One of the problems we're having, I'm sorry to get on my soapbox here, but with our politics today is half the country, and I mean both halves, don't respect the other half. Alls I hear I'm a liberal, by the way, but alls I hear my liberal friends say is how stupid Republicans are, and they're not stupid. They're not. Come on, half the country is not stupid. And then I hear the Republicans say the Democrats are stupid. They're not stupid. Right? There are reasons to be for or against our current president. Good reasons on both sides, and we need to respect that. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but you need to try to see things from somebody else's point of view. That's respect. Is to be like, oh, yeah, I don't agree with that, but I can see where you're coming from. That is a real key to getting along with clients, because you're going to get clients that come in and they're very different than you. And I actually try to make it a game and try to be like, I want to understand, I want to feel what you're feeling and kind of get inside your head and see why you'd be coming from that point of view, and at least empathize with that. Comments? Questions? Thoughts? Okay. This won't be really surprising to you guys because it looks like everybody in the class already does this. But I've had classes where that's not true, right? Of course, genuine. Let's talk about empathy and sympathy really quickly because there is a big difference, and in therapeutic relationships, it's extremely important. Empathy is not sympathy. And empathy is being able to empathize that somebody drowning in a pool is in danger and it must be awful. Sympathy is jumping into the pool with them so you can experience what drowning is like. You don't actually want to feel the person's feelings totally and then be in the same bad situation they are. That's actually codependent. You want to empathize that their situation is very hard. Now, it seems kind of weird, but I want to empathize that they're in a really hard time. I don't want to ruin my own life or my own feelings because then I'm not in a good space to help them. And sympathy also has an aspect of, oh, you poor thing. Oh, you poor helpless thing. And that doesn't help people either. Instead of empathy, which is, my God, that sounds really hard, and you must be really struggling with that. I know you can do it. How can I help? That's very different. I think I have a cute little Brene Brown video that I put in here. I do. Let's see if we can play it. That's the big question. If not, I've got a backup plan, so bear with me here. All right, we are going to try to play this video. Please nod or raise your hand if you can't, let me know if you can't hear the sound.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Cool. So, thoughts on the video?
Yes.
Please, I want to hear.
So is the bear the one that was sympathy or empathy? I think I got confused.
The bear is showing empathy, and you're right. I was watching the video and thinking, oh my gosh, I've made some very small distinctions that are very hard. Because the bear does feel the other person's feelings, but the bear doesn't make themselves feel terrible. They just allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to feel where this person really is. And
okay.
And the guy looking down from whatever it was, a deer or whatever, is sympathy.
So, I want to have one question.
Hold on 1 second, Miss Nguyen.
Oh, no, I'm done.
Okay, go ahead, Miss Nguyen.
I think the empathy have the 2 reasons. I mean, and sometimes have one people in the same date, right? You can say, oh, I am so sorry about that, right?
Right.
But, and so empathy, but, and the not really empathy. Empathy, you need to, the feeling you and feeling, you put you feeling for in the them, so you can understand how hurt them have, right? And
right.
So empathy.
Right.
So
it's true. You are being vulnerable long enough to feel how bad it would feel to be drowning.
Yes.
I don't want you to jump in there with them, but yes, you do. You're right. And it's very hard for us. It's very hard because you will have clients, by the way, share stuff with you that's very painful, right? They will share with you the death of their loved ones with you. And you need to empathize with their sadness and feel their sadness while still maintaining your own inner joy. And that is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And you don't want to fix it either. I really like what she said there. It's just like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. I also like to do a little thing where I mirror back people's feelings to them.
Yeah, so that's why I tell you, empathy have two, not only one. You can say, "Oh, I am so sorry about that." You mean and you feeling so sorry about that, but you only talk that. But even that you haven't the two feeling, and you can put the feeling on the them feeling, and so you can see how much them in the hurt inside, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's actually why I like mirroring back. I don't even like saying I'm so sorry about that. I say stuff like, oh my gosh, it must have been the end of your entire world when you lost your spouse.
yeah.
Whatever I hear them saying, I try to say back to them to acknowledge that I have really, really heard them. Like, oh my gosh, so you feel like you can't get out of bed, there's no reason for living anymore. Like, I really try to mirror back what they're saying. Not fix it, not whatever, but really let them know that I understand the feelings there. Yes. Other comments, Miss Hunter? You're about to say something.
So, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that and feel genuine.
Oh, then don't.
Just mirroring back what people say, because I feel like it's not that I'm not genuine, and it's not that I don't feel empathy. It's just that I feel like just mirroring back what they said, a person would figure that out eventually.
So,
but I'm just repeating what they say. And I guess in a way, I feel like the way I could show that I am listening is, I guess in a way, repeat back what they say, but then also like maybe say a story, kind of like that bear or whatever, where it's kind of like you talk about maybe something that happened to you or whatever, and so then it's like, I do understand this because I went through this, or something like that. But then I don't know if that's divulging too much information or what.
So I'm hearing, for one thing, I'm hearing you really care about this topic. Secondly, I'm hearing that you're saying that if you just mirrored back what they said, it would sound mechanical and it wouldn't feel authentic.
Exactly.
And then maybe the way you'd feel authentic is by sharing a story about how it happened to you, but you're second guessing that too. Is that correct? Like, just that, is that the right thing? Okay, guess what I just did, Miss Hunter?
You repeated exactly what I said.
Well, I didn't repeat exactly what you said. That's the difference. When I say mirrored back to you, I digested what you said, digested it, and then said, here's what I'm hearing. That's what I meant by mirroring. That's very different than repeat. Yeah, you're right. You do not want to repeat what somebody said. I really tried to digest what you said and said, so what I'm hearing is this angst, right, between this whole thing, which I love. And you're absolutely right. You got to do your own thing.
Okay, no, that's helpful though, the way you just did it. I'm going to have to figure out how to do that as well.
Maybe I guess what I did was summarize what they said.
Oh, yes, very good. Summarize.
Yeah. And then,
what thing?
Yeah, summarize what they said. So, oh my gosh, so you're telling me this whole thing is really complicated in your head, but you really care, and you don't want to sound mechanical, but you still want to show you care, and you want to tell a story, but you're worried that the story might make it about you, and you still want to make it about them, right. So you're trying to figure this whole thing out, and you're thinking out loud right now.
Exactly. Thank you, sir, for empathizing.
Yeah, and I really did empathize there. That was not faked. Like, I can't help but empathize when it's like you guys can't help but learn when you put the lesson in your own words. You can't help it. So at the minute I've summarized what you said, truly summarized it, I'm now kind of feeling that whole thing of like, oh my gosh, in fact, I'm really with you now. I'm like, this is complicated.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have something.
Please, Miss Cooper.
So even if you've never been through what they're going through, I usually just say something like, wow, I have never been through that myself, but I can almost imagine like how horrible that would be or how bad that would feel.
Yep. That's wonderful.
Like still make them feel like you understand. Yeah.
I've even told people, by the way, it's okay not to understand. I've told people, oh my gosh, I have never experienced anything like that. I have no idea what you're going through, but it sounds awful. I mean, just admit to them, like, I don't know. Like, there's lots of stuff. I've had a very blessed life. There's lots of stuff people have been through that I have not had to deal with. It's even hard for me to understand. So I don't want to insult them. They'd be like, oh, I know just what you mean. No, I don't. Yes?
I have a comment.
Yes, Miss Monreal.
So, well, I think just we as like to even speak and even share what we're feeling. You know, we do it for a couple of reasons. One, sometimes people are hurting so much that that's their kind of only little lifeline as connection.
Yeah.
But even if we're only listening, because really, there's really nothing that we can say that is actually going to make their situation better.
Right.
But I think that when we do listen and be sincere in whatever it is that we respond, and it doesn't, I think that we should take the pressure off of ourselves because, again, there's nothing we can say that is going to change their situation.
Right.
But I think when we are sincere in just a heartfelt, kind of just like you said, just acknowledging what you heard them say, I think it is something very, I can't think of the different word, but very ministering to them, and that in itself is just healing.
I love that you said ministering. There is a guy that wrote, by the way, you're right, we shouldn't actually give advice. We're not therapists. It's out of our scope of practice. We're actually not supposed to give advice. But you're right, you don't have to say anything. There is a minister who works with homeless people and stuff, but he wrote a whole book about witnessing, and it's this point of holding space and just literally witnessing what somebody's going through, just really holding that space. And when I first started reading the book, I'm like, what good does that do? But it's actually shocking what good that does. And it's kind of what you're talking about, Miss Monreal, is this concept.
That sounds really interesting. What's the name of the book?
I'll find out. I've read the whole thing too. He runs Poor Boy Ministries in California, which is a bread shop that hires gang members and stuff.
Oh, wow.
It's really interesting. And he does, yeah, I'll find his name.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
I once upon a time used to have a regular client that she confessed to me that she's really lonely in her life. Her son was murdered, and at a moment like that, it kind of like takes you back, like, oh, can't believe that happened to you. You know what I mean? But you have to just put on this face of saying, I can't imagine what you're going through. I hope that at least what I can do adds some kind of comfort in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's well said. Yeah. And I like how you kind of kept it within reason, too. You're like, I really care, and I can't fix that, but I can do this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Anybody else? No? Okay. I know what I'm doing. Cool. So let's talk about trust. And I want to make a point about trust. And I want to talk to you guys about the trust bank. And this is not my concept. This is Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey talks about the 7 habits of highly effective people. Are you guys there? Can you hear me?
We're still waiting on that point.
Oh, shoot. Of course you are. It's a pretty trustworthy group, that's why. Good. Cool. Cultural competency, we can go on and on and on and on. It's not that I don't care about it. It's not that I don't care about it. I do. But it's just about being open to the fact that other people are different than you. And feel free to ask clients about stuff in a nice manner when you don't know. There's lots of people from different cultures that have behaviors and rituals and things they do and things they can't do based on their culture, and it's okay to ask them if you don't understand something. It really is okay. People love talking to you about themselves. They love explaining. This is even true with medical problems. Somebody will introduce something I've never heard of. I'm like, what is that? They'll tell you about it all day long. So just don't be afraid to ask, you know. Yeah. I've had students who are like, I'm fasting right now. Oh, why are you fasting? well, it's this ritual in my country. Oh, I didn't know anything about it. Thank you so much. Now I can kind of support the fact that you're fasting right now. Like, they're not mad that I don't know. They're mad when I don't care, I don't ask. All right. Your book goes into a whole big thing about LGBTQ, and it's not that I don't care about LGBTQ. I think this should have even been a bigger section of people. Everybody's unique, and everybody at some time has felt not included, and so we're always looking to include people. I'm just always trying to look to be inclusive. And you definitely want to do that with your clients, because massage is so personal. I have to know that you're going to be okay with me if my sexual preferences aren't the same as yours, if my sexual identity isn't the same as yours, if my religion isn't the same as yours, if my eating habits aren't the same as yours, if my political beliefs aren't the same as yours. All of that should be thrown into this category, in my opinion. I feel like, and I don't think I'm just fooling myself, I feel like this is a very open-minded class, and this chapter is a little outdated for this generation. My generation, maybe, but not this generation. Okay. Any questions, comments before we get on to professional boundaries, which is the second part of this chapter? Do we need a little break because it's Thursday? Not getting a nod from the three faces I can see. Yeah? No break? No break? Yes, break, Ms. Nguyen? Okay. Let's take a 10-minute break, everybody. So professional boundaries are about the boundaries between you and your client, and understanding what they call the power differential. And the power differential is the fact that you have some power in the room the client doesn't. Now, some of this is good because you need to be in charge of your room, right? But some of it you really need to respect. So why would you have a power differential in the room? Why would you have more power than your client, at least emotionally speaking, than your client when they're in the massage room receiving a massage? Anybody? Why?
I totally just missed that entire sentence.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Kandars.
Oh, I was just saying, because, like, you have their head and your hand, and, I mean, yeah, I'm not a psycho killer, but you could technically slit their throat.
All right.
Slit my throat, you know?
I like where your twisted mind went, sir. But yes, the fact is they're in a very vulnerable position, right? They're in a very vulnerable position. You are coming from a position of authority. You're kind of the doctor in the room, right? Even though you're not a doctor. And are they wearing clothes?
Oh yeah, and they're naked too.
So your client is naked. They have their neck in your hands. And you are in a position of authority. So there is a power differential where you have power over them, or at least perceived power. You may not really have power over them, but it's perceived power, right? So, well, I got to close my door really quick. I just realized it's open. And my girlfriend's working from home too, because she's quarantined too, and she's on the phone setting appointments for people and stuff. Anyway, all right. So why would this matter? Let me give you a really simple example of a young man I worked with who had to take ethics classes for me because the State Board of Massage Therapy required him to take ethics classes as part of his disciplinary action. So, this young man, all he did was ask a client out on a date. When the client said no, he never asked again. Now, by the way, that is typically the right way to do things. That's typically not harassment. You can typically ask somebody out on a date once. If they say no and you never bring it up again, it's not usually considered harassment, right? You're allowed that one shot, and then they say no, and you never bring it up again, and you don't treat them differently or anything, it's fine. He did that. So why did he get brought up on disciplinary action in front of the board? If that's all he did. What, Miss Petrie? You're thinking. It is all he did, by the way.
It's so ridiculous.
Well,
it's so ridiculous.
it sounds ridiculous, but there's more to the story. He asked
her while she was on the table.
Yes, Miss Yanas, thank you. He asked her while she was on the table. It's and by the way, he was a nice guy. I mean, I as far as I can tell, he's a nice guy. He really meant no harm. She was a long-term client. He thought they had a connection. He asked her on a date. She said no, thank you. He dropped it right away. He totally respected her. He didn't treat her any differently. She didn't claim he did.
Yeah, I would think that whole scenario would be uncomfortable.
Well, that's why
I've never asked anybody on a date that's ever been on my table.
No, of course you haven't.
I've been asked.
Sure.
And I've always said, I don't date clients.
Right. Yeah.
And then they're like, well, stop being your client. I'm like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Yes. But anyway, you're absolutely right. So he asked them while they were on the table, and the client complained to the state board. And the state board, didn't take his license away because what he did wasn't the end of the world. But they made him get additional ethics training, which is how I met him. He had to come to me for ethics training. Really nice guy. And it was through the ethics training that he discovered what the difference was. He's like, I don't know. I don't understand what the problem was. Like, I totally respected the no, and I didn't do anything else afterwards, and nothing changed. And I said, how much do you weigh? And he's big. He goes, about 275. And I go, so you're towering over your naked client and you asked them on a date. And really nice guy. He went, oh, yeah. I go, would that be intimidating? Did that person feel at that moment like they were completely safe to say no? And that was the client's complaint. He was in a power differential.
Wait. I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're telling me that he asked her on a date, like everything, like she said no, everything went back to normal. She went back to him, yet she complained?
Oh, I don't know if she went back to him, but she complained to the board, State Board of Massage Therapy.
Oh, because you said, he went, everything was back to
normal, at least for that session. Before. I don't know if she went back to him or not. I hear where you're coming from, Ms. Torres.
Okay.
But and maybe she did, and that would be very weird and not right either. But the fact is, she complained. She complained that it was unethical and that she felt intimidated at that moment, and I can see how she would, right?
I can see how she could too, but I mean, that's pretty ridiculous, especially if this has been a long-term client of his.
Yeah.
For her to actually go to the board instead of just stopping to see him, if that's how uncomfortable she felt, that's pretty messed up.
I gotcha. I think Ms. Yanis has something to say, though.
I just think, like, if it were me and I was in that position, you're going there and you're thinking, this person is a professional. Now you're laying on the table and he asks you out and he's been touching you this whole time. So now you kind of feel uncomfortable. So I get it. And then what are you going to tell him, like, while you're laying there naked? Like, oh, that made me really uncomfortable. Like, you don't really know where to go from there, you know? Like, to her, that might have been the best choice. Like, she's like, maybe he's done this to other clients and I'm not the first girl. I'd rather be the one to report it. And if it's an issue, then we get him out of the way. And if it's not, he gets extra classes he has to take.
That's right. That's all that happened. Is it possible, by the way, Ms. Petrie, I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying to explore with you. Is it possible, Ms. Petrie, that you think she overreacted a little bit because as a woman you have had to deal with so many of these situations that you are a little bit, like what's normal for you is not fair for you. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? I'm saying that you have to deal with a lot of guy stuff that us guys don't have to deal with. Like girls don't do this to us. Right.
Yeah, I understand to a certain degree, but just keep in mind, this is somebody that's been seeing him for a long time.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like in the story. This is a continuous
Yeah.
client.
Yes.
And so they've obviously have had conversations and such.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like certain things that they agree upon and make conversation on if that's a long-term client.
Right.
And so in his eyes, he felt like we have like a real connection here. Like we have, and I get the uncomfortable part that she's naked on a table completely. That's unacceptable in my eyes.
Yeah.
You don't ask somebody who's naked on your table if they want to go out with you. Like, okay, well, now that you've seen me naked.
Yeah.
But, so I think that part's definitely unprofessional about it. But I think she went really too far. I mean, I've had some really screwed up situations as a massage therapist that I've been in, and never once have I thought about, I'm going to call the cops on you. You know what I mean?
But that's to my point. So you're saying you've dealt with some really nasty situations, and so this situation seems minor to you.
Yes.
Right. Yes. But just because worse stuff has happened doesn't mean that less stuff is okay.
Hey,
Yes, Miss Cooper.
my first thought was, what if the lady who reported him, what if the reason she felt so uncomfortable is because she was, like, raped? Or had something like that happen to her?
Sure.
Maybe she was just trying to make it so that he wouldn't do that to other clients, because that must be very, like, scary.
Sure. Those are all, everybody, by the way, Miss Giannis, Miss Petrie, Miss Cooper, you've all said very legitimate things. I think we all agree on that, right? We all agree this is a very gray kind of area. And the real reason we bring it up with it for is not to make anybody wrong in the story. It's for us to remember when we're in the power differential that things change. They really do change. That's very, very true. But she reported him because she felt uncomfortable and vulnerable. Maybe even more so because she's been going there so long. You know, not less so, maybe more so. Who knows? And the board said, hey, we understand it wasn't a horrible thing you did, but we think that requires a disciplinary action. And they required him to take extra ethical training. And it might have been the right choice because it was during that ethical training where he said, oh, I see. I can see how he's 6'2", and that's not against him, but 275 pounds, and the client's naked, and it might be kind of intimidating. It reminds me of what a comedian once said. This is a guy advice I give guys. The comedian said no guy should say something to a woman that he wouldn't want another guy in prison to say to him. And it's pretty good guy advice. And if I was laying naked in my bunk cell in prison, I wouldn't want some other guy standing over me, 275 pounds, asking me out. But anyway, anybody else? Or the same people have more comments? None of you are wrong, and I'm not just saying that to keep the peace. I think you all have really legitimate comments. Yes, Miss Petrie.
Oh, we're not fighting anyway. Are you kidding?
I don't know what you're talking about, Jenny. I'm mad at you now.
I know, right? You don't agree with me? We're done here.
But as a woman,
I do agree. I do agree with Giannis, actually. I do agree to the points that she was making.
Yeah.
And I do understand that this woman felt uncomfortable. My thought process on that is that you felt uncomfortable, so now you want to get him into some kind of trouble.
Oh.
You don't want, because she doesn't know what's going to happen. She doesn't know if he's going to lose his license or not, but she knew that could be an option.
But yeah, but Miss Giannis was pointing out, what if he's doing that to multiple clients and making them, and you're saying make her feel uncomfortable. She might have felt afraid for her life. I mean, she's got to get out of that treatment room. Like, you know what I mean? Let me give a different scenario, and this is truly just for illustration. But Miss Petrie, how long have we known each other?
Oh my God, years.
Okay. If I if I asked you out, which I'm in a very happy relationship, this will never happen, all that kind of stuff, but if I asked you out right now that I'm your teacher and I have control over your grade, even though we've known each other.
I mean, I've been in that situation though.
Oh, we're sorry. But was it right?
Well, not with you.
Not with me. Thank you. Let's clarify.
I had a teacher in high school who came to my job even. Like, I worked for an after-school program for children, and he came to my job.
And was that okay?
So, no, it wasn't okay.
Right.
It was an uncomfortable situation. But I'm not going to call up the school board and be like, fire him.
Well, but could you see why maybe you should? What if I'm going around preying on students and they feel like if they don't say yes, they're not going to get an A? How do you know you're the only one? You don't. Gotcha. Anyway, I hear you.
I don't know.
Got it. Anyway, what I'm trying to point out here is that one act that's completely innocent in a situation where there's no power differential, right? Like if she wasn't his client and he met her at a bar and just asked her out and then took no as an answer, that's fine. Where there is a power differential, it's all of a sudden not fine, right? It's the power differential that makes it not fine. Somebody say something? Miss Mo, you're kind of coming through, Miss Mo Real. Go ahead. It's not working, Miss Mo Real. The power differential is in our favor right now.
Sir,
Yes.
I can tell you, I need to pay the 240 for one pair.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's continue on. Miss Morel, when you get better connection, I really want to hear what you have to say. But we can't hear you right now. Okay, everybody. So they have all these strategies for maintaining really good boundaries. But basically, they all come down to one thing, which is taking care of yourself. Your boundaries tend to get kind of weak when you don't take care of yourself. And that, when you take care of yourself, you're much more self-aware of what's your stuff. And don't project it on the client. And we're going to get to projection here a little bit. But before we do, let's talk about disclosure. Disclosure is when you share stuff with your clients. Should you share personal information with your clients? Everybody's shaking their head. So, nothing? No. Okay. Miss Petrie on this one says no. Miss Cooper.
Just not deep personal things.
Oh, so Miss Cooper, you see a gray area. So you can share some personal things like, I had a great day with my little brother. Right?
Yeah.
But maybe not other things. Do we need to share some stuff to connect with our clients? Do we all share some stuff in this class when we do gratitude?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. But we keep some stuff personal, right? Like I'm assuming stuff is going on in your guys' lives that you're not sharing during gratitude, that you could, but you're not, because it's pretty personal. You're being personal, don't get me wrong, you're being super authentic. I feel like people are very vulnerable here, but you're not laying out all your laundry. I'm not.
I mean, there's a difference between if a client's asking me, oh, do you have a busy day? How many massages are you doing today?
Yes.
There's a difference between saying, oh, I have 4 or 5 today so far, and there's a difference between them asking you something deeper about yourself.
Yes.
Because that doesn't really have anything to do with me. How many clients I have for the day doesn't really have to do with me.
Yeah. By the way, you're all right that it's really good if you can keep the conversation on the client, right? It's what do they want? What are they up to? What are they doing? All that kind of stuff. But let's suppose you can't book an appointment with me for the next 2 weeks because you're going on vacation with your boyfriend. Is it okay to say that? I see a nod from Miss Giannis. you have to measure the client. You have to, there is not a right answer to this. We're just discussing it. But I would say yes, and that's kind of what Miss Cooper is saying. You can share stuff like, I had a wonderful day with my little brother. I'm going on a trip with my boyfriend. The stuff you don't want to share is interpersonal, deep relationship stuff. I am not trying to be inappropriate here, but you would not talk about your sex life with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. You would not talk about the fact that you guys are having a really hard time in your relationship right now. It's too personal. It's a lot different than saying, I had a great dinner out last night with my little brother, with my boyfriend, with my mom. We're going on a family vacation. These are fun surface details, right? So there is gray area here, right? If you share nothing, by the way, you're going to seem like a robot. Thoughts? Anything? No? Yeah, I feel like we're all on the same page on this. That we would share stuff, but we really have to think about what we share. It's one of the reasons we do gratitude in class, by the way, is to learn about healthy sharing. Because some people are not good at it. They share either nothing, or they're like, they lay it all out. And you're like, that was uncomfortable. You know? Yeah. Okay. The problem, by the way, when you share too much with a client is you start to not become therapist-client. You start to become friends. And you don't really, you want to be friends in the treatment room, but you don't want to be friends outside the treatment room. That's the issue.
I have something to add.
Please, Ms. Torres.
That whatever you tell your client, it could be used against you in the future.
How so?
Like, you think they care for you. You think they, I don't know. Like, you know, you care for people, so you think people care for you the same way, so you kind of open up, and you're like, oh, you know. But then, they will do anything to get a 30-minute massage for free, or a facial.
Yeah.
There has been so many situations where you're like, oh, I love the client, blah, 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 and then they're like, oh, guess what? One of your clients complained. About what? Well, she said that you were talking too much. And that day, she didn't want to talk.
That does happen,
she
yeah.
felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot because I see it. And I talk to the
does.
managers and I'm like, and then they go talk to the therapist and be like, what? Who? She?
Yeah.
No, really? She said that about me? Yeah, she said that you were going on and on about your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your husband, whatever.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. So now we have to give her blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Ms.
Yeah,
Torres.
so
That's a common
whatever.
That's a common complaint, actually, everybody. In my opinion, a massage session should be a lot like our gratitude session, right? The client comes in, you're like, how's your day going? You know, you might even ask them, what are you grateful for today? What a great way to start a session. And then you get to work. Because a lot of clients don't actually want to talk for the rest of the session. They'll keep talking out of being polite. They're being polite to you, and you don't realize they don't want to stop talking, but they're done talking. It's a really common complaint. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and be careful what you share with clients. We had a client at the Princess who been seeing this therapist for a long time. He wanted a massage outside the spa. She gave her phone number to him. You're not supposed to do this, but it's not the end of the world, right? Then he started being very inappropriate with her. She complained and said, I can't see this guy anymore. He'd come to the Princess, try to see her. She said, I can't see him anymore. And he said, well, she's called me. And he had her number up on his phone. So it looks like she's in the wrong. Like he used that information against her. So yes, I say, go ahead and share personal details, but they're brief. Because you shouldn't be talking about yourself a lot. It's fine. I'm going on vacation with my boyfriend. I can't wait. My kid had a great soccer game today. I love him so much. Hung out and watched movies with my little brother. Great. That's it. Because it's back on the client then at that point. Yeah. Okay. So, be careful of your social media. You guys should all know this already. But be careful of your social media. Don't post anything about your clients on your social media. I mean, you can say I love my clients, but not I love a specific client. Right? Also be careful of your social media because employers look you up when you apply for jobs. And if you're there, doing beer bongs off the second story, roof of your house while you're jumping in the pool and stuff like that, you're probably a decent, wonderful human being, but employers don't like seeing that. And even look at your email address, that it's a nice, decent email address. Because people have very unusual email addresses I've seen before. They're just not quite appropriate for employment. And then the really hard part is when to cross boundaries. Like, there are times to cross boundaries. There are times where somebody needs a hug, right? They're having a hard time, and you wouldn't hug them all the time, but there just are times, and you've just got to be very intelligent about reading those situations, because you don't want to be cold too. Emotional boundaries are all about identifying which feelings are yours and which feelings are somebody else, and that's harder than you think. You think I'd say more about that, but I won't. It's really hard. It's very easy to project your feelings on somebody else. Okay, we need to talk about transference and countertransference. I think that's it. And it's because they're common in massage. They're common in all kind of medical type fields. And by the way, those of you that are teachers and stuff like that, in a nice way, some of the children that Miss Yanes takes care of transfer their mommy feelings onto her, right? She's like a little cute mommy that comes and helps them and da-da-da-da, right? And that's a good thing. That's fine. Transference is not always a bad thing. It's a bad thing if it gets carried away, right? It's a bad thing if they don't like their own mommy and they only like Miss Yanes, right? But with your clients, clients sometimes transfer their feelings onto you of things that they're not getting in their own life. So they don't have any friends and you become their best friend. They don't have a romantic relationship and you become their romantic relationship. You're not doing anything, by the way. This is all in their head, right? And that's kind of basically the boundary. What goes on in your client's head is their business. Your client can be in love with you in their head. That's fine. It's normal. They come see you. You're charming. You're sweet. You massage them. They're going to have some feelings of like, I really love my therapist. That's fine. Transference is a problem when they start to try to live out that fantasy outside their head. So when they try to become your best friend, when they try to date you, and that's the type of transference you need to shut down. And Miss Petrie said it best. She says things like, I don't date clients. She doesn't say, I don't date you. She doesn't hurt their feelings. She's just like, I have a rule. I don't date clients. And then, of course, they always say, yeah, well, then I'll stop being your client. No, it doesn't work that way. I don't date past clients either. She's got it shut down on all levels. And she's smart, too, because you lose a lot of clients. So it's fine if they like you, however they like you, but when they try to play that out further than that, you have to shut that down. When transference gets outside of their head, you can't play into it. Because when you do, you're starting to participate in countertransference. It doesn't always happen this way, but countertransference is when you start making the client your best friend. Or you're kind of having romantic feelings about your client. Yes, Miss Petrie.
I had a situation at the Princess where this guy kept trying to buy girls for a night. And he offered me his Rolex. He offered me $4,000 or $5,000 in cash just for one night with him.
Wow.
Like, this isn't how this works.
But that's not transference. That's not transference. That's just straight breaking the law, by the way, just to let you know. But yes. So he's not transferring on you that you're a romantic partner. He is trying to purchase sex from you. Right. By the way, just so everybody knows, in the state of Arizona, for a client to even imply anything about sexual gratification in the massage room is breaking the law. So basically, for them to even joke about it is breaking the law. If you were to turn them in, they are breaking the law right there. So don't ever feel like you have to put up with that. If somebody's like, oh, it'd be funny if you gave me a happy ending, at that point you can say, this massage is over, and if they give you a hard time on it, you can report to the police. It's actually against the law to even joke about it. in the state of Arizona. So people are like, oh, I'm just joking. That's what guys always say, by the way. It's always a guy. I'm just joking. You're breaking the law with that joke. Just like I can't joke about having a gun or a bomb when I check into the plane and go through the checkpoint. It's not a joke there, right? Anyway, countertransference, by the way, is a problem too. Massage therapists do. Sometimes your life's not going so well, and your clients end up becoming your best friends. It's fine if you feel that way. It's fine if you have Mr. or Mrs. Wonderful come every day and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, this person would be a great life partner. Just don't act on it. Don't tell them. Don't share those ideas with them. It's fine to have passing feelings in your mind. It's all okay. But if you act on them, if you start oversharing with them, if you spend time with them outside the treatment room, you're now acting on your countertransference. And you have a huge problem on your hands. You could lose your massage license, all sorts of stuff. Thoughts? Anything? Miss Monreal, did we ever get you back? No? Okay. Book talks briefly about intellectual boundaries. Most people's beliefs and thoughts are important to them, and they are part of their self-esteem. This is why people, I'll use the political climate word again. This is why people get so upset when you disagree with them. It's because their identity as a liberal or a conservative or a Democrat or a Republican or pro-Trump or anti-Trump, all those, both sides, are tied up with who they believe they are as a person. And so when you disagree with them, especially in a rude manner, you're attacking their self-esteem. So be careful with clients. You don't have to agree with them, but you don't have to disagree with them either and judge them. My answer to a lot of things is, I can see how you'd feel that way. Because I can. I can see why you would vote that way. I don't care what way you went it. I can see why you voted to legalize marijuana. I can see why you voted not to legalize marijuana. I mean, I can make really good arguments on both sides of that. So I can see that. That's all. I don't tell you what my opinion is. That's what you do. Time boundaries are a tricky one. Really, really tricky. You make sure you're on time all the time. That helps. But what I generally do for people is I will make up 5 minutes of their time. I don't make up more than that. Because now you're cutting into my next client. And that's how I explain it to people. Like, oh, Miss Cooper, I'm sorry you're running so late today. We can run 5 minutes over, but then I have another client. That's my nice way of saying, like, you know, I'm sorry that happened to you. That doesn't mean we adjust the price of your treatment. It doesn't mean anything. And I will try to make up 5 minutes of it because I can do that. But then I have another client afterwards and wouldn't cut into theirs. And if you make it that way about the other client, it really helps. Oh, Miss Cooper, I'm so sorry. Yes, I understand. Traffic's terrible. In the back of my head, I'm like, traffic seems to be terrible every week. But anyway, but I will make up 5 minutes of that time for you. But I'm afraid I've got another client after that. I say that even if I don't have another client after that. And I know that's a lie. But I want Miss Cooper to remember that my schedule is important and my time is important. I don't know why I picked on you, Miss Cooper. Sorry. I don't have any problem with your time.
Yeah, it made me kind of sad because I was late today.
Ah! Sorry, that was
So
honest.
I turned my camera
So
off.
honestly, why I picked you was there's only 3 people showing on my screen right now because I'm presenting, and you were just one of them. And so I just grabbed you. I don't think there's anything subconscious about that at all. Anyway, so and financial boundaries. Remember, you deserve to get paid for your massage. Just remember that. I usually charge everybody except my own mother and girlfriend, maybe my daughter, for massage. So family members want massage. Maybe you don't charge them full price, but charge them $20. Because you know what happens when you don't charge them anything? All of a sudden your time's not very valuable to them. Right? And it's exhausting work. And I find that $20 is enough that they at least are like, oh, I got to pull out $20. Yeah, you do. I've got to stand up here and work on you for an hour. I mean, like, do something. Respect your time. Respect your time. So your book talks about dual relationships. This is like when you have two relationships. You have a friend who was a friend before and is now a client. So you're still friends outside the treatment room. They're a client inside the treatment room. Miss Petrie and I have a dual relationship. Miss Petrie has been my friend for a long time. I don't call her Miss Petrie. I've never called her Miss Petrie, but I do it actually while she's in school to help maintain our dual relationship. And even when we talk to each other in private, I still call her Miss Petrie because it helps maintain this thing of I'm her teacher right now. The day she graduates, she's Jenny. That's it. And she does the same courtesy to me, but we're doing it because we're trying to manage a dual relationship, because in this relationship, the rules are different, right? And so, and you're great about it. Thank you, Miss Petrie. But anyway, so you can kind of manage dual relationships that way too. Like when your friend is in your treatment room, they're the client. If they're paying full price, they're getting a full treatment and they get the same regard. Outside the treatment room, they all of a sudden become your friend again. So I also recommend, if you have dual clients, like relationships with people that do work for you too, don't charge each other. Trades sound good, like, oh, I'll fix this thing for you and you give me a massage, but find out what they charge and you charge them, trade the money back and forth in cash. It's a lot better, because that way if they don't do their half of the trade, you've got the money. Or if you don't do your half, they've got the money. It's just a little easier sometimes. I know massage therapists do that. They're like, I don't want to trade. I'll pay you $60 for a massage. If you give me a massage, I'll pay you pay me $60. And that way they don't get mad if somebody doesn't do their end of the bargain.
Now, if it's like in that moment though, you plan like, hey, come over and trade, and like how we do in class, like one person goes first and the second person goes second, and then boom, you would trade.
Oh yeah, and by the way, Mr. Kandaris, this is the most like exceptions to every rule chapter I've ever presented in my life, right? I mean, absolutely. If that's the way you want to do it, that's absolutely fine.
And just like economics-wise, I do believe in bartering, so if homeboy wants to bring me 3 chickens, then I'll rub his back.
Yeah. If that works for you, do it. Absolutely. I would say 99% of what I've shared today is advice. And you have to be an intelligent person to know that, like, yeah, there's a lot of times that this is going to go very differently. Yes, Miss Petrie?
Yeah, just gauge the situation. Sorry,
No, you're fine, sir. Yes, Miss Petrie?
So, I don't know about you, but in my past, when trades go on, they don't last very long.
Yeah.
That the trading idea does not last long at all.
No, it doesn't.
It dies out very quickly. It's almost like, well, I just did these massages today. I don't really feel like doing you now.
Yeah, and that's why I said about the payment thing, is based on the same experience you've had. We've both been in the field a long time. And that's why I'm just like, no, Miss Petrie, you want a massage, just pay me. And later, if I want to pay you for a massage, I will too. And that way we're not resentful because one of us didn't feel like it one day. You're right. But Mr. Kandaris, you're right too. If that's how you guys want to work it out, that's fine. Nope. Really quickly, dating clients. If you are single, one day you will work on some client that you like. It will happen. Don't date clients. And I would say if you ever do date them, make sure they have not been your client for 6 months. 6 months is a very common term. 6 months without being your client before you date them. Okay? Be very, very careful about that. The power differential changes the minute you date your client. They now have all the power.
6 months?
It's just very common, Miss Torres, to show that there truly wasn't a business relationship there anymore. 6 months seems to be a very common frame of time to say, hey, I have not worked on this person. This person is no longer a client. I haven't seen them in 6 months. And then we went out on a date. There's a very clear division. There needs to be a time division. And 6 months seems to be kind of the minimal thing that most people accept is, okay, all right, they're really not your client anymore. And the reason you want to be careful is because once you've dated them, they have a lot of power over you. They can call the state board and say, I'm this person's client and they are romantically involved with me. That will get you in trouble. Think how much trouble that guy got in for just asking a client out. If you go out on dates with them and they are still paying you money, that's serious. If you are having sexual relations with a client And yes, if you're having sexual relations with a client and they are paying you money, that could be seen as prostitution. Now, that's not what you mean it. You're like, I'm getting paid for my massage and I'm dating this person. But that's why you don't want to mix these things. Because in every case I've ever seen, too, it's always innocent. People didn't mean anything by it, but somebody got upset and somebody reported somebody.
I was going to ask real quick on that slide. You had something that said like the NCTB something. Yeah, the NCBTMB. What's that?
Oh gosh, National Certifying Board of Therapeutic Massage and Body Workers.
Okay.
And that they set a lot of nationals. They're I think they're a nonprofit. They set a lot. They also have a national exam, things like that, kind of like the MBLEX. And a lot of places trust them for kind of national standards. And they're the ones that kind of say the 6-month thing. And so it's kind of become a national standard. And remember at the beginning of this entire lecture, I said professionalism is based on what's reasonable and customary. Well, they've kind of set the reasonable and customary standard of if you haven't worked on somebody in 6 months, they could then not be considered your client. And then you've got a big enough division that you could date them. So if you find Princess Charming or Prince Charming, stop working on them and wait 6 months. Okay? And hopefully they're not dating somebody else by then. I'm not going to go into sexual misconduct only because I don't think I have to. Here's why. Of course you're not supposed to have sex with your clients. Of course, right? And of course they shouldn't do anything sexually suggestive to you. You're allowed to end the session immediately then. You can end the session anytime you want for any reason, by the way. You don't even need a reason. The reason I'm not going to go into it in great detail is, strangely enough, this is not where massage therapists get in trouble. Massage therapists get in trouble with the innocent thing, right? The guy that had to come for ethical training didn't try to have sex with his client. He just asked her out. It seemed very innocent to him. The more obvious stuff of don't sleep with your client is obvious to people. They're like, of course I wouldn't do that. So I don't think I really have to go into detail about that. But just to protect yourselves, that nobody's allowed to suggest that from you either. Ever. And they're breaking the law if they do. And they're the ones that should be worried if you end the session and they give you a hard time, you can call the cops. Like, it's a no-brainer. Do be careful, by the way. There's been this big thing where a couple of therapists, out of the millions of therapists in the United States, have filmed clients without their permission. And this is why most places don't allow don't allow cell phones in the treatment room. And when we have a clinic here, we don't allow cell phones in the treatment room. It's not because we think you're going to film your client. It's because we don't want your client to think you filmed them. Right? We know you're not doing that, but I've had students they check their text on their phone all of a sudden for some reason, and the client wonders why their cell phone's open. They don't know. So it's a good rule of thumb to kind of keep the cell phone out of the treatment room. It will save you a lot of headache. Shouldn't be in there anyway, because you shouldn't be answering it. So, something I don't care. I don't think, well, let's go back. Just really quickly, sexual harassment. What do I want to say about it? This is your book's definition, by the way. Sexual harassment is conduct that has the purpose or effect of substantially interfering with a person's workplace, educational opportunity, or other social situations by creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment. For most people, this is obvious. Most sexual harassment is repeated behavior. Repeated unwanted behavior. It's the repeated part that's really significant. Okay. Oh. And last but not least, with sexual risk management, to try to avoid somebody thinking sexual harassment, be careful of terms of endearment. And what that means is when I'm like, oh, hun, what's the matter? You'll catch me do it occasionally, right? I'm from that generation where we're like, oh, sweetie, what's the matter? That can really be misconstrued as sexual harassment. So just be careful about terms of endearment like that.
It's like one of my managers at work. She's older generations from the South, and she calls me baby all the time.
Yes. Yeah. We have some people at my work that do it too. Some of the ladies at my work do it. They're an older generation. They do it. I love it because I'm from the older generation. I don't feel sexually harassed. I feel adored. I love it. They're like, oh, sugar plum. Oh, honey pie. Can you just do this? And I'm like, yes, I can. But I have to remember that somebody else may not perceive it that way. When the creepy 50-year-old guy says, oh, sweetie pie, sugar plum, they might be like, what? It's very different. And again, that has to do with power differentials too. Okay. Clients acting inappropriate in a massage room. I just want to make this final kind of thing here. You do not have to have a reason to end a massage. You do not have to have a reason to end a massage. You can end a massage without a reason. So if I'm creeping you out and I'm your client, you actually don't have to figure out what you're going to tell somebody. You can just end the treatment. Now, I mean, I would advise you not to end every treatment just because you're miffed by something or something bothers you a little bit. But my point is, I also don't want you sitting there in an uncomfortable situation thinking you have to justify it. You can end the treatment and give them their money back. Right? You can do that. In most business relationships, you can just stop the relationship right there and give the person their money back. So don't ever feel like you can't end a treatment. The other thing is, if you've made a threat, stick to it. And here's what I mean. If I have a client whose hands are underneath the sheet, and I feel like he might be doing something inappropriate with himself, I don't judge that. I just say, sir, hey, your hands need to stay outside the sheet for me to continue the massage. If he does it again, I'm like, sir, I'm going to have to stop the massage if you keep doing that. If he does it again, I've threatened him. I need to follow through with the threat. And I just get up and walk out. The reason I say you need to follow through with the threat is once you don't, you've now said you have no boundaries. So if you set a boundary, you have to keep a boundary. If you say, I'm going to end the massage when a bird chirps, then when a bird chirps, you need to end the massage. Right? Or don't say it. Miss Hunter.
Yes, thank you. If you feel like you need to end the massage or whatever, the person is being inappropriate, and like say it's like halfway through the massage or whatever, and then they start acting inappropriate, like what the heck, like you have to still give your money back because that's not fair to you.
Yeah.
Like you spent your time and now you can't get that back, and this person was an asshole and now you have to give them their money back. By the way, you're probably right, Miss Hunter. I was probably taking the easy way out there where I'm like, just give their money back and be over with it. It would depend, I guess. I guess if I walked out just because I'm like, I don't know, Miss Hunter's creeping me out, I'd feel obligated to give your money back. But if I walked out because you were touching me and you wouldn't stop, I wouldn't give you your money back. You're right. I'd be like, I'm going to call the cops. You better get out of here. I see.
So I guess it depends. I just meant, like, if I've terminated the relationship and I don't have a really good reason, my reason is I just, then I feel like I've got to refund your money. But you're absolutely right, Miss Hunter. You don't have to give money back to perverts.
Okay, got it.
Yes, Mr. Kadaris.
In private practice, I was just going to add on to what she said, and I did have a question. But like, if you're in private practice, you can make that one of your terms. Like,
Yeah,
even if you type up your own, legal work for your business, whatever, that could be something that you would put in there. So if they try to sue you or whatever, because you still.
that's true. And actually, I like it. It actually might be a neat thing to put in your paperwork. You're absolutely right. Where you say both of us have the right to end the session anytime during the session, and the fees will be prorated at that time, for example, or whatever you decide, and kind of empower both of you to end the session
like the
whenever.
Same thing with the cancellation thing. If somebody pays early and they cancel on you, that you can put that in there. That okay, now you still wasted my time. So
right, but you're right. Money. It has to be in there somewhere in writing, though. You're absolutely right. Like there is not. We don't pay back your cancellation thing or whatever. Yeah, well said. I like that.
Now my question is, could be a little extreme, but you never know. And adding on to what you were saying, if like the client is doing this, doing that, and you follow through with your threat, end the session, and then they continue to be sexually harassing you or even sexually assaulting you, and you, in that moment, can't call the police, can you defend yourself by any means?
Of course you can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, I assume so.
Yeah.
You know, if someone's,
Yeah.
reaching for your junk or whatever,
Yeah.
could you pull the strap on them? Like,
You can do anything. Yeah. I luckily have not encountered a lot of situations like that. I don't just mean me personally or even knowing other therapists. Usually clients are verbally inappropriate trying to lead something to someplace else.
yeah.
But yes, you always have that right, sure.
I assume so. I just wanted your opinion.
Yeah. If anything ever happens, whether you work for somebody or whether you work for yourself, document what happened. Document. Yes, Miss Petrie?
Not to sound terribly disgusting or anything, but
Yeah.
I remember, I'm sure you might remember as I'm telling the story, but I remember at the Princess, there was a gentleman who had to bring in his own towel because he had an issue with pre-ejaculation while getting massaged.
Wow. I don't remember that, but okay.
Yeah, he used to come in quite often, actually, because plenty of people have had him. So he would have to bring in his own towel to lay on and start massaging him because he had an issue.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's...
Well, it goes back to you can refuse you can refuse service to anyone.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I understand, like, both of us worked at the Princess. I don't know if the Princess would have said that about that, right? Like, they might have...
No, you tried getting rid of this guy several times and nobody would listen to you.
Oh, I can believe
And then
that.
finally, I had the last of the situations with him, and it was a really disgusting situation. So anyhow, that's what got rid of him then.
Oh. Anyway, but in a... Wow, thank you. Anyway, legally speaking, you have the right to refuse service to anybody.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for that walk down memory lane. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just didn't know if that's... I'm not a guy, so I don't know if this is an actual thing that happens to some of these guys. Like, is it something that's actually uncontrollable? Does it become like a condition?
I mean, I honestly can't. I honestly
don't know.
can't answer that. But I will tell you the one thing I've learned from massaging, that you have too, is that no two people are alike. So I'm sure there's one guy out there where this is true. Like, I don't know if it was him, but you know what I mean.
Right. That's where the confusion comes
Sure.
in. Is that if I ever happen to be in this situation,
but this is
again,
my...
God, let's hope not.
But this is my point. It's okay to say to somebody, I'm not judging you. I don't feel comfortable working on you.
Okay.
Right? Like, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. And that's the nice thing about massage. It's very personal. And you can say, like, I totally get it. It's a normal condition, but I don't feel comfortable working on you. It's a nice out you have.
Okay.
Right? It's a nice out you have. And one you should use, too, when you feel like it. Whatever happens, by the way, when you do have to end a session, document the session. Document the session. I can't tell you how many legal proceedings I've been in over the phone with a phone judge, because they have arbitrations done over the phone, and it comes down to one thing: documentation. And they literally believe the person who's got documentation, especially if you always have documentation. So, and the best kind of documentation is zip off an email, even to yourself, because the email shows when you wrote the email. Great documentation. Cool. All right.
So what would you say in documentation? Like, this